Okay. So can everybody see my screen? It's looking good?
Yep.
Great. So you can turn on your camera as you're watching this, and then I only ask to mute yourself as you're listening, just in case there's background noise. This is an open conversation. So if I say something that you say, hey, I need a little more clarification on this, or here's our situation, how do you think it would apply? Feel free to unmute yourself, ask your question. If you're a little shy about speaking, you can also put it in the chat. I'll keep an eye on the chat. So don't feel like you have to monitor that or have to unmute yourself for this, but feel free to think of this as a conversation. I'm doing this just because I've done it a million times and want more people to see how it can be easier to plan social media all at once instead of staring at that empty update box going, oh, we haven't posted anything in 3 days. I think we need to do something. I don't know what to do. That is the goal of today's meeting, is to help you get a little more organized on social media and how to plan it all in advance. But before we get started into that, I want to ask maybe a rhetorical question for you to consider on your own is, what is the purpose of social media? So it's gotten a little obfuscated over time as social media has become more popular and integrated into our everyday lives. It's very easy for people to forget that it started as media that's social. So instead of CNN telling you, here's the news, here's what I think is important, it's what you think is important and what you want to share, which is the social part of social media. So as you're thinking through social, I always find it's helpful to think about how can you bring it back to the roots of where social really started, and think about the purpose being, how can you add value to somebody else? The whole purpose of the social part of social media is our relationships and our networks with each other. So think through that as you start to plan. Then the other question I want you to consider is, what's the purpose of social media in your organization? Whether you have a single business that you're working on with just you, or you're part of a bigger team. I always encourage people to take a step back, especially when doing planning, and think about, where does social media really fit? Is it your most important channel, your most important ways of reaching people, or is it just one piece of a multi-channel strategy? That will also help your planning, is understanding where it fits into all of the activities that you're doing as an organization. But before we get into that, just to introduce myself, if you don't know me already, my name is Angela Arnold, and at Arnold Marketing, we bring small businesses agency level marketing at a price point they can afford. I love working with small businesses. I've been fortunate to have an incredible career. I worked at a very large ad agency, helping huge brands like Royal Caribbean, L'Oreal Paris, Converse sneakers, and Capital One do their social media back when it was still kind of new. You know, social media was a wild west, and people were trying all kinds of different things, and didn't really have an understanding of how to create a social media plan, what's a good social media calendar even looks like. We were helping brands create that right at the beginning. And from there, I moved into the corporate world and helped these big international brands spend lots of money reaching lots of people, managing social media pages with tens of millions of followers, where if something goes wrong, we get 10,000 messages in just a few minutes. And how do you deal with that scale? So I've been there, I've gotten the battle scars, and I said, this is fun, but I think I want to take all this knowledge and help the little guys. So that's why we only work with small businesses. It's because I think small business is really important. That's where a ton of our economic value is. It's keeping money in the community. All of this is super important. And so that's the goal of our organization, is to help small businesses with some of this hard-earned knowledge that we've gathered over the course of our career. So let's back up, get into the meat of this and talk about social media, what it is and what it doesn't, right? As I mentioned before, social media is just media that's shared socially. What do you or your organization, your brand find interesting? What do you care about? What do you want other people to see? Social media is a power in that you're putting something in front of somebody else, in front of your network, and helping them think about and see something in a different way. It's a way to deepen and maintain connections with your customers. Whenever people say, I am starting a small business, we have no budget, I have no time to do marketing, I think what I really want to do is social media in order to find new customers, I like to caution them that it's hard to build new audiences on social media. It's absolutely doable. But the most important purpose is to, again, use your current network. It's the people who already know you, who care about you, where you've had conversations with them. Make sure that you're thinking of social media as a way to be connected to them, and continue that conversation with them versus just getting new people. Give me one moment. All right. And again, feel free to unmute yourself, ask a question, or pop a question into the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on that as well. Then the other thing that people forget is social media is just a communication channel. So if something's going wrong with your business, put a message out on social media. They just want to know. A lot of people and brands tend to get really precious about their feed. What does my Instagram page look like? If I go and look at all the posts, does it create a cohesive story? The number of people who go to your profile page and look at it that way is pretty small. They're looking at your posts individually in the feed as they come through. I wouldn't worry over much about something that not a lot of people do. And don't be afraid to use it to communicate. If there's a short-term outage, for instance, if you're a technology company, use that to tell your customers, hey, here's what's going on. What social media is not is free marketing. For a while, it was really easy to get lots of reach and get in front of lots of new people. That is not the case anymore. So it is not the end all be all. It is not a way for everybody to see your brand and discover you from scratch. Again, it's possible. It just takes more time and energy than it used to. And that's something to know. And then the other one is it's very difficult to go viral. If you've been in marketing any period of time, at some point somebody's asked you if you can make something go viral. Unfortunately, there's no go viral button. There are elements that make things go viral, but it's not something you can really plan for and do in advance. A couple of guiding principles, again, for social is that it is not the end all be all for your brand, for your company. So if you realize you're spending 90% of your time thinking about talking about social media and neglecting other channels, like maybe your website or your email marketing, take a step back and think about what's really going to be effective for reaching my customers, for reaching new customers. Something to note is that organic social, meaning I just go onto facebook.com, create a post and post it with no money behind it. That's organic. That works against brands. Facebook and Instagram, and even now TikTok have figured out that people like to see other people. They don't like to be advertised at, even if it's organically, even if they followed that company. And so it's harder and harder to get seen in the feeds. The other piece is determine the purpose of social media. So your brand, is the purpose to let people know about new products? Is it to build relationships with customers and get their feedback so you can incorporate that into your product or service? Is it to only give them discount updates? Understand why you're using social media, and that will help you with your planning. The other piece is to know your place. It can get kind of tempting to say, well, I want to hop on this current trend and say something about this news story that's going on, but most of your customers, most consumers don't really care about what their fabric softener has to say about whatever the news is that's going on. Know that sometimes it's okay to not say anything. If your brand doesn't have value to add, or something to add to the conversation, it's fine to just not say anything and not post. The other piece I love to remind people of is add value. With all of your posts, are you entertaining somebody? Are you informing them? Are you inspiring them? Can you connect with them emotionally? If you're finding yourself creating posts that you get bored by and that you wouldn't click on, that you wouldn't engage with, then stop and take a step back and say, I need to pause on this for a moment, rethink what we're doing, rethink why we're doing it. Because your audience is just like you. If you're going to get bored by it and you're closer to your brand than anybody else, then they're going to get bored by it. They're not going to engage. And finally, the other guiding principle is to build a community. Again, the social part of social media, it is about a network. It is about a conversation. It's not your brand talking at people. It is building a conversation and a community about the topic that your brand is in, about your industry. Make sure you're asking questions and starting conversation and learning from them. That is super, super important. So let's talk about organic social media. A couple of notes here before we get into the details is that it does change constantly, unfortunately, as you've seen, even over the last 2 years. Things like Instagram Reels have come out. And it's easy to get sucked into these details, into these new formats and templates, but make sure you have the foundations covered. Make sure that you have the basics. Are you creating good content that people understand, interact with, and find engaging? Are you building a community before trying out the newest channel, creating a TikTok just because you think there's opportunity on TikTok? Know if your community is there. And again, as I mentioned earlier, is social media a good place to fit in with your business? Are there other activities you should be focusing on other than just creating new social media posts? And make sure that you are promoting your social media often. People tend to forget because you may assume, oh, my customers know we have an Instagram. Well, maybe they don't. Make sure on every order confirmation email, it says, here's our newest Instagram post, go follow us there. Every time you update your website, you can show, hey, here's a conversation we had over on our Facebook group. Go join and speak with us. Make sure you're shouting out and linking to your social media and all of your other activities. So one other note to talk about is the algorithms. People ask, what is the best time of day to post? What is the best day of the week to post? Do I need to schedule everything exactly in advance? For some brands that are more news-oriented, yes. However, for most other consumer brands especially, it is up to the algorithm. Something you posted 3 days ago may appear in somebody's feed now, or something you posted 15 minutes ago will appear in their feed. But every post that you do will not be seen by your whole audience. So if you feel, as you're creating your social media calendar, if you feel a little repetitive, man, we've already talked about this, I've already promoted this article or this sale, people have seen it, the odds are they probably have not. Just a small percentage of your audience will see this stuff. So make sure you have multiple posts to support each of your initiatives, and then test around with time of day posting from there. But again, social media is not going to be your end all be all. It is a partially paid channel. Sometimes you're going to have to put actual dollars into it to get seen and build your community because you're working against the algorithms. Now, something to think about with your channels. So when I say channels, think about it's the where you're posting. It's Facebook, it's Instagram, it's YouTube. It takes time to maintain each of these channels. So when you're considering creating a new one, or maybe you're taking a step back and saying, we created a Twitter page, but we haven't updated it in a few weeks or a few months or a few years. All of those takes time and energy for your business to maintain, and consider, should you have that? Do you really have the bandwidth and the resources to maintain those channels? And is that where your customers are? So I would ask each of you after this as homework is go through, look at the footer of your website and all those social icons that you have there. And are you giving each of those channels the best attention that they should? My argument that I make to a lot of brands is, instead of having 5 icons with channels that you're kind of maintaining, or you're just cross-posting the same content across all of those, narrow it down to your top 1 or 2 that you can really focus on, you can really win at, create a community, start conversations, and then just kill the other ones. It's okay to let go of old social media channels. If they're not working well for you, they're not working for you. It's okay to let go. You're not missing out on free marketing, I promise. It's okay to just focus on the ones that you actually have. And this goes the same with adding any new channel. Make sure you have the bandwidth, make sure you have the time to really focus on these channels and get good at them before you add something new. Before I go on, I want to remind everybody that I'm recording this. If you would like a recording, please send me a message in the chat. You can send it to just me, so you don't have to share your email address, and I'll make sure that you get a copy of this recording. The other piece to this, as you're planning out, is consistency is very key. These algorithms that rule our lives want to know that you're posting consistently, that you're not posting too much, you're not posting not enough. So again, this underscores the question of, should you have all of the channels that you do? Should you kill some of them? Because if you're not consistent about it, it's harming you in the long run, and those posts that you make will be more and more difficult to see. This is why it's so key to have a plan, so that you don't end up looking at that blank update box thinking, I have no idea what we're going to post this week, or I haven't posted something in 4 days. I just need to get something out there. Planning ahead will help you be consistent. It will help you in the algorithms, and will also help your mental sanity. When you think about your channels, think about the native functionality of those channels. There is a reason they built those, and the algorithms of those channels like it when you use those. So here on the left is an example from Starbucks. They have a tweet that most people do. They just write some words. That is called a text tweet. And that's fine. But to mix it up, another post they did is a poll. That is a built-in feature from Twitter. Their algorithm will reward you for using their built-in tools. LinkedIn just came out with a poll feature recently. For a while, Facebook would only show videos. So videos was the biggest thing on Facebook. So just pay attention to what's going on in your own feed. What kinds of posts are you seeing? Is it a text post? Is it a photo post or a video? Is it some kind of built-in feature like Instagram Reels? That means the algorithm wants you to do those things too. So just pay attention to what your feeds look like, and make sure you're giving a good variety to the types of posts that you do. And as you're creating these posts, in marketing, we have the term call to action. It is, what action do you want the consumer to take after they see your message? So as you're crafting a social media post, ask yourself the same thing. Do I want people to like it? Do I want them to comment? Do I want them to share? Or do I want them to click through to something? Here, I guess I need to add watch, because videos are getting so popular. That will help you determine how to craft your post. It is very rare that somebody is going to like and comment and share and click on something. Think about the end action first, and then you can craft the content around that by focusing on, here's what I want the viewer, my audience, to do. That will help you be that much more effective in your posts. And of course, make sure you're mixing it up, right? If as you're crafting your posts, okay, I'm going to do some that, I know people will just click like and move on, or I really want to start a conversation. Let's ask a question to get some comments. Mix it up as you're doing your planning. As we start to talk about building your plan, again, I want to remind you that social media is about connection and community. It is not about you telling them advertisements. It is not you talking at your customer. Make sure you're thinking about it in terms of, let's have a conversation, learn from your customers, ask them, hey, how are you using our product or service? Or what do you like best about it? How would you tell somebody else about us? What new feature do you think we should add? If they're following you on social media, it means they already like you. So take advantage of that and be sure to build that connection and build that community. The biggest indicator of health for an online community is people having conversations with each other outside of the brand or the moderator leading those conversations. So if on your Facebook group, for example, people are creating their own top level posts and interacting and talking to each other, helping each other troubleshoot problems, that is the best sign of health of a community, because you did not create the top level post. You're not having to go in and answer customer service questions. Your community is doing it for you. That is the ultimate benefit of a good, healthy social media, is that people will help each other without your social media manager having to hop in and answer every single question. Another thing to think about with a community, it's kind of like an iceberg. This is my sad attempt at drawing an iceberg. Just use your imaginations. Most people are lurkers, meaning they just scroll through their feed, they will look at it, and they will not interact. They will just look, observe, and move on. 9% of people are participants, meaning they'll click a button. So if they can just click like, if they can double tap to heart, they'll do that. It's a little more engaging than just scrolling past, but it's still pretty easy. And then your top 1% of people are active engagers, meaning they will comment, they will share, they will create a new post or new conversation on your timeline. Your goal as you're creating your social media is to move people from the bottom of the triangle to the top. How do you entice people, get them involved to where if they've never even liked a post, you just get them to like it or upvote it? Or can you then get them to leave a comment after they do that? A lot of people, when they're building their social media communities, they start with, I want to start at the top. Why aren't people talking to us? Why aren't they answering my questions? Well, you've got to warm them up a little bit. It's just like any relationship. You can't jump into marriage after the first date. You have to say, hey, let's go do coffee. Let's get comfortable with each other, learn about each other. Then that's the things like, just click the like button or just click a single button, and then eventually move them up into active engagers. So consider this as you're building out your social media calendar as well. A few tips for how you move people up that triangle is positive reinforcement. So it sounds like a psychological manipulation, and it's kind of true, but it works. Anytime somebody comments or shares one of your posts, you need to immediately like it and leave a comment. If you're busy, if you have a lot of noise happening in your social media channels, I like to just react with a single emoji to save time. But by liking and commenting on their interaction, you're reinforcing that behavior. You're saying, hey, I recognize you. Thank you for having a conversation. Thank you for doing something that takes a little more effort than just scrolling past my post. The sooner you can get to it, the better, because again, that reinforces that behavior. It's more exciting to get a like back from a brand 2 seconds after you posted something than 4 days later. The other piece is to ask questions. So you may say, well, I don't know how to get people to comment. Just ask a question. Say, hey, what do we think we should do next? Or how do you feel about this new product or service feature, or just something in your industry? You can ask for their opinions on the industry. A good way to start a conversation on the internet is to just ask an opinion and people will give theirs. The other piece is if you're trying to get people to just like your statuses, because of the nature of social media, if it's some kind of news or some kind of announcement that's different than your status quo, maybe it's a beautiful product shot. If you say, hey, this product is now restocked, or we're going to make this product in a new color, they're more likely to like that post. And then of course, the other one is add value, not noise. So with each of you, you're the expert on your business. You know your industry, your business, your offering better than anybody else. Can you give them an interesting tidbit, a piece of factual information, a did you know, a interesting statistic that they can then go tell somebody else? Can you give them a new way of using your product or service that maybe they hadn't considered before? Again, instead of just talking at them, give them useful information. You know, have a conversation that people will find interesting and engaging, and they will reward you with that. So now let's talk about how to plan. We have all the background stuff done. You have some new mindsets, hopefully, about how to approach social media. How do you plan it? How do you think through an entire year, potentially, of social media? Well, the way to do this is called content pillars. Content pillars are themes, categories, genres, whatever word you want to use. They are the main topics that your brand will talk about. It is the intersection of what your brand cares about, your unique industry, and what your audience cares about. They bought your product or service for a reason. That means they are interested in it. So think about what content topics can fit into both of those. Here's how to think about content pillars. It can be about your product. It can be about your customers, maybe telling customer stories if your product is really experiential. It can be showing your employees or behind the scenes. It can be updates about your industry. If you're a B2B brand, you know, you're looking at the newest developments and updates. You can help tell people, here's what's going on. If you're location-based, let's say you are a coffee shop in Austin, Texas, you can say, hey, the food truck next door is going to have a sale on tacos. So next time you're getting coffee with us, know that you can go next door and get some tacos. Then the other piece is your expertise and experience. Again, you know more about your company, your product or service than anybody else. What can you bring to the table? What can you tell them that is useful and interesting for them to know? And storytelling is another great content pillar that you can do. Here's an example. So this was for a women's boutique. It was here in Austin, Texas. They sell vintage and retro clothes. So think about like kind of pinup styles, very unique style of clothing. They have a brick and mortar store, and they also sell online. So in their social media, you have to consider both of those factors. So think about your unique business. Are you only e-commerce, or do you have brick and mortar stores? So here what we did is we had the major categories on the left. It was meet the maker or manufacturer. For a boutique, they are very careful in what brands they sell. They only have limited floor space. Even online, you can't offer unlimited products. Why did they pick those specific makers? Why did they pick those specific manufacturers of those clothes and those products? Talk about why you picked them, what makes them special, what they do. Your customers will then understand, oh, I was looking at that poodle skirt. I didn't know that that was made in America. They're that much more likely to purchase that skirt because they understand the story behind it and why you as the brand choose to offer that product in your store. The other one was styling. This is an obvious one for a clothing boutique, but it's how to wear clothes and accessories, maybe outfit ideas. We found that her audience, she had a niche for plus size women who needed and liked retro clothes. And so could we do how to style on plus size bodies? That was a major category. Another one was design. So she was an expert on 40s versus 50s versus 60s styles? How do you know the difference between these? How did fashion evolve along this timeline? As a clothing boutique, obviously she's not designing her own clothes. She wasn't around in the 40s to create these styles, but she's an expert. This is where she can show her knowledge and expertise in this area. And because her customers are buying retro type clothing, they want to know this too. So think about not just your product, but where does your product live? What is the history of your product? Another content pillar was inspiration and observation. So sometimes it's fun on social media to just look at something cool, just look at something pretty. Don't use too much brain power, don't overthink it. Here's just some eye candy. It's okay to sprinkle that in. It will save you some time and energy on your social media. Usually with those, I'll do a simple emoji caption, you know, heart eyes or a star. It saves you time and adds some variety to your content mix. The other one is customer highlight. So for her customers, let's show how they look in the clothes. Let's show off the outfits that they've made out of the things that they've purchased. Let's inspire customers, not by showing, you know, overly styled models, but real people using the products. And then living a lifestyle, because it's a retro shop, she goes to attend retro car shows. And so we would have her write up and take pictures at retro car shows or old fashioned sock hops to show, hey, this is really an embodiment of our brand. So as you can see, you can create the categories or content pillars, write out just a simple little description to remind you of what this is. And then the key piece is the cadence. So what is the proportion of content you want to produce? Because it's a clothing boutique, we want to sell lots of clothes. The styling category and inspiration and observation were the top two. Can we show the products looking great, inspire people to go, oh, I didn't know that sweater was in stock, I'm going to go grab that. Think about what's important to your brand and how reasonable is it for you to get that content. So for example, the living the lifestyle, well, she's not going to an event every single day. She's going to one maybe every month, every few weeks. So she doesn't have unlimited content, so you can reduce the cadence and proportion of that. Here's another example for I pulled lots of apparel brands as examples today, but this is a consumer accessories brand. It is custom tweed accessories. So we had a mix of content pillars showing off the product, talking about the history of tweeds, because making your own custom tweed turns out is very complicated. She has manufacturers in Scotland creating these fabrics for her. A lot of people get confused about what is the difference between a tweed and a tartan and a plaid. So we had a lot to speak on through that. The other one was owner and lifestyle. So some of you may own your own business and say, I shouldn't be in front of the camera. I shouldn't be involved. Well, people love to see who's behind the business. Put your face out there. It's okay. They want to know that there's real human beings behind the products and services that they're buying. They want to know that it's a person and not just a brand. And so it's okay to say, here's my journey and creating this. As an example for this client in the owner lifestyle category, whenever she would go do inventory at the warehouse, we'll take photos of her in a giant pile of boxes trying to sort through all of them. And the customers love it because they know that somebody's doing this behind the scenes. They're really working on this. Again, customer love. I'm a big fan of showing your own customers interacting with your product or service. And then the love of Scotland. Can we show pictures of her travels in Scotland and show off, that beautiful landscape that's there. Other things to think about when you schedule. So we have content pillars, we know what they are, we know how often we want to talk about them. Now, when you're considering your schedule, think about that proportion of content. Can I make posts that encourage likes and is just a photo? Or can I create a piece of content that's a question? And the purpose is to get comments and engagement that way. Think about events and holidays that matter. I will say this again, events and holidays that matter. If you are a coffee shop, there is no reason to post about National Hot Dog Day. Don't feel the need to celebrate holidays, or I call them fake internet holidays, that have nothing to do with your brand, your customer, your industry, unless it's actually relevant to them. You're just adding noise. If it's not a post you would want to see and interact with personally, then don't do it. The reason I see brands doing these fake holidays is because they just don't have a content plan. They go, I need to post something today. National Taco Day is trending. I'm just going to post something about that. It's a cheap way to get engagement. You may get a couple of likes, but you're not building a community around what you do. You're not inspiring conversation about your industry, your product or service. So really consider why you're posting and if it matters to you. Obviously, the other one is promotions and sales. If you don't have a promotions calendar for the year, make sure that you sketch one out, because you'll need to start promoting it far in advance, and making sure you're planning your posts that way. And then any new product or service launches, maybe you're adding a new feature to your software, have that on the calendar as best you can. Obviously, dates change all the time with things. So let's take a look at a 30-day posting preview of what this would look like. It can be as simple as just create a table. Here I did it in PowerPoint. Just create a table and say, we need to talk about the product 6 times. We need to talk about lifestyle 4 times. We need to talk about the customer 2 times, and just start putting it in. Once you know the content pillar you want to do for that day, then you can get concrete and say, okay, we want to talk about, for example, here on the 16th, Tweed history. That's under the category of history, but we can get up close and personal with it. So start with the broad categories, put those on the calendar based on the content proportion, and then get specific. I want this to be a photo post. I think I'll do a short little video. Maybe we'll do a poll, whatever unique feature it is per channel for that. Another example here, this is how you can really do it quickly. You can have 4 weeks, and week 4 Ipsum apparently is a new type of week. Put in the post you want to do. So we said, all right, we just want to post at minimum 3 times a week. So for week 1, we're going to talk about product, owner, lifestyle, and history. Then you can start to populate in these content pillars week over week and make sure you're doing it with the right proportion. Then you can go back and get this level of detail into your content calendar. So start broad, say, I want to post 3 times a week. That's all I can do consistently. Put in your content pillars, and then with the right cadence, and then get more detailed as you do it. Again, if you guys have questions on this, we can take some questions here in a minute. But when you create your calendar, when you're thinking through your content pillars, think about the why. Your social media does not exist to celebrate National Taco Day. It is to help inspire your community to have conversations with each other, conversations with you, and like geek out about the thing that they bought, the product or service or industry that you're in. So keep that in mind as you're doing your social media. Make sure you are adding value to the conversation instead of just creating noise. And I want to remind you, it's okay to not post. If you don't have a good post, you don't feel good about your social media for that week, just don't say anything. It's okay. You can take a break. It's not going to kill your algorithm. Just take a step back and think about, what can I do that will really add value to social media? Thank you guys for listening so far. I will take some questions. Feel free to ask even the most detailed, tiny question. Maybe you have an issue with Facebook Ads Manager. You can pop something into the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question. I'm happy to take these questions now. And again, if you want the recording, you can send me a private message in the chat, and I will make sure that you get the recording as well. And here I'll share my screen again so you can see my email address. I am not here to sell you guys anything. I did this presentation because I know how frustrating it can be to try to play in social media and run a business and do everything else. So feel free to send me a question, an email. I just want to help you guys get better and learn how to do social media in a less painful way. All right, looking at the chat. So Sini, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, asks, do you recommend hiring a social media manager for a small company? My question to you or thought to you is, depends how small. If you are struggling with revenue, if you don't have a ton of good cash flow, I would say sit down, plan out all of your social media for the year yourself. Try to schedule as much of it in advance yourself. Even if you set 2 hours a month on your calendar of this is my social media planning time, go ahead and do that. A social media manager is, I would say, one of those kind of nice to have things for a small business. Things like SEO or email marketing can give you a lot better financial results immediately than social media, which takes time to do. That would be my thought. We have another question. This is a great one. So when displaying customer love, would you recommend always asking for permission first? It depends on how they posted. So if they tagged you, that usually means they're cool with it. If they posted it onto your page, then that's them implicitly giving permission. What I like to do is just send them a quick DM or a quick comment saying, I love this picture. This is awesome. Can we use it on our page? Most of the time they'll give a thumbs up. This also hits on something I want to tell you guys, is I have run many, many tens of millions of dollars on online ads, whether it's Facebook ads, Google ads, you name it. The ones that perform the best, get the best click-throughs, get the best conversion rates, are pictures that the customers gave us. It's not the photographers that we hired. It's not the expensive videographers we made to do a beautiful video. It's just the mom and her kid taking the picture of them using the product where it's kind of askew and a little blurry. Using that in an ad is so much more effective than any other content that you can do. And it's because it looks like it belongs in the feed. It's because it looks like a real human posted it and not a magazine ad or something that they would see on TV. Think about social media in context. If your stuff is looking like an advertisement, take a step back and make it a little more human. It's okay to be a little messy and less polished on social media because it's not an ad. I will say, related to that question, if you want to use their photos or videos and ads, then make sure you get explicit permission. Make sure it's just written down that they approve that you do it. You don't need a big complicated legal piece of paper. Just say, do we have your permission to use this in advertising? We would really love to do that. And if they say yes, then just make sure you keep a screenshot of that conversation. All right, another question from Sarah. She says, since you recommend against cross-posting, do you create a calendar for each social media channel the brand focuses on? And if the brand's sole focus and audience is on LinkedIn, what's the harm in posting that same content to their other channels? Great question. I do recommend against cross-posting, but only if it's exactly the same. Make sure that if you have a photo, it's okay to post that on both LinkedIn and Instagram, but just change the caption a bit. On LinkedIn, people want to read a little more. They like a longer caption. On Instagram, they may not even look at the caption, so you can shorten it or just have an emoji. So when you're creating your content calendar, start with the pillars, start with here's what we're going to talk about. Then I recommend getting really detailed on, okay, on LinkedIn, we'll have a longer caption. On Instagram, we'll have a shorter caption. You can have the same photo. Don't feel like you need to create a social media calendar for each individual channel. That will drive you crazy. But do think about, am I using LinkedIn polls regularly? Am I using Twitter features regularly? Make sure you're thinking about each of these channels of, is there a unique aspect to them that you're sprinkling in to that. All right. Any other questions? Feel free to put them in the chat. Again, if you want a recording of this, send me your email address into the chat, or just send me an email at my email address, angela@arnoldmarketing.com. Thank you guys for joining. I really love talking about this stuff. It's one of my favorite things. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I hope it was helpful. And again, if you sent me your email address, I'll send you a recording of this. Thank you guys so much for joining. Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you.